the chin, the smirk, the chainsaw hand. In 1992, Bruce Campbell had everything Hollywood claimed to want in an action hero. 6'1" of wisecracking, demon-slaying charisma, backed by Universal Pictures' money and Sam Raimi's vision. Instead of standing next to Schwarzenegger and Stallone on video store walls worldwide, he vanished into straight-to-video obscurity while guys who couldn't throw a punch became megastars. This is the story of how Hollywood looked at the perfect action hero and said no thanks, and what happened next will make you question everything you think you know about who gets to be a legend. The origin, Michigan to madness. Let's rewind to 1958, Royal Oak, Michigan. Bruce Lorne, Campbell entered a world that had no idea what to do with him yet. His father worked in advertising, his mother stayed home raising Bruce and his older brother, middle-class suburban America. Nothing about his childhood screamed future cult icon. He was just another kid going through the motions, until high school changed everything. Wiley E. Groves High School, 1973. 14-year-old Bruce Campbell walked into drama class and met a kid named Sam Raimi. That handshake sealed both their fates. Raimi was already obsessed with filmmaking, shooting Super 8 films in his parents' basement with whatever he could scrounge together. Campbell had the look, the height, the natural screen presence that Raimi's amateur projects desperately needed. They started making films immediately. Crude, violent, absurd short films that nobody outside their friend group would ever see. But something was happening in those basement shoots. Campbell was learning how to take a hit, how to fall convincingly, how to sell physical comedy and genuine terror, sometimes in the same shot. While other kids were playing football or chasing dates, Campbell was getting buried in leaves, doused in fake blood, and perfecting the art of looking terrified on command. The gang expanded. Rob Tapper joined as producer. Scott Spiegel came aboard. They called themselves the Metro Film Group, and they were serious about this insanity. After high school, while everyone else headed to traditional colleges, Campbell enrolled at Western Michigan University to study theater. But his real education was still happening in Sam Raimi's orbit. They made a short film called Within the Woods in 1978. 32 minutes of pure horror chaos shot for $1,500. Campbell played the lead, a possessed maniac terrorizing his friends in a cabin. The short was rough, amateurish, but it had something studios couldn't manufacture: raw energy and genuine commitment to the madness. That short film became their calling card. Raimi and Tapper used it to raise money for a real feature. They traveled across the country showing Within the Woods to anyone who'd watch, asking for investments. Dentists, doctors, lawyers, anyone with disposable income and a taste for horror. They raised $350,000 through sheer determination and that 32-minute proof of concept. Campbell was all in. At 21 years old, he committed to what would become The Evil Dead, knowing it meant months of physical torture in the Tennessee wilderness for almost no money. His friends were starting careers, getting married, building normal lives. Campbell was about to spend 12 weeks getting beaten, buried, and possessed in a freezing cabin. He had no idea this decision would make him a legend, or that Hollywood would spend the next 30 years trying to pretend he didn't exist. The Evil Dead phenomenon. Picture this. Winter, 1979, a remote cabin outside Morristown, Tennessee. Temperatures dropping below freezing. No heat, no running water, no safety regulations. Just a crew of 20-somethings from Michigan trying to make a horror film with pocket change and pure insanity. Bruce Campbell suffered in ways that would violate labor laws today. Sam Raimi needed authentic terror and pain on camera, so he delivered authentic terror and pain. Campbell got thrown into walls, dragged through gravel, buried in mud, and subjected to 12-hour makeup sessions in sub-freezing temperatures. The famous tree attack scene, they shot that over 2 days in the actual Tennessee winter, while Campbell tried not to get hypothermia. The contact lenses they used to create the demonic possession effects were the kind designed for corpses, not approved for living humans. Campbell wore them anyway, enduring hours of pain and temporary blindness because the shot required it. His hands got so covered in fake blood that the liquid froze to his skin between takes. When crew members quit, which happened constantly, Campbell stepped up. He operated cameras, did his own stunts, and helped build sets. This wasn't a movie shoot, it was warfare, and Campbell was the frontline soldier taking every hit. The film wrapped in early 1980, and they spent months in post-production, editing in Sam Raimi's father's garage. When it finally premiered in Detroit in October 1981, the local reception was mild. Horror fans liked it, but nothing suggested this movie would change anything. Then Stephen King saw it. The man who defined modern horror called The Evil Dead the most ferociously original horror film of the year. That endorsement opened doors across Europe. The film screened at Cannes in 1983 and became an overnight sensation overseas. British audiences went insane for it. The video market exploded with demand. But here's where it gets wild. The Evil Dead became a massive cult phenomenon, launching Sam Raimi's directing career into the stratosphere. It made back its budget hundreds of times over. Campbell became the face of the film with that iconic final shot, blood-soaked and screaming as dawn breaks. And Hollywood's response? Silence. Complete radio silence about Campbell as a potential leading man. Evil Dead 2 arrived in 1987. Bigger budget, more ambitious, pure slapstick horror genius. Campbell elevated his performance to levels most actors couldn't touch. Physical comedy that would make Buster Keaton proud, combined with genuine terror. The film crushed at the box office and became an even bigger cult classic than the original. Still, nothing. No major studio came calling with action hero offers. No franchise opportunities. No career trajectory toward leading man status. Meanwhile, Sylvester Stallone was getting $20 million per film. Arnold Schwarzenegger was becoming governor-level famous. Jean-Claude Van Damme was headlining movies. And Bruce Campbell, who had proven he could carry a film, take horrific physical punishment, and command the screen with more charisma than all of them combined, couldn't get arrested in Hollywood. The injustice was just beginning. Army of Darkness, the moment that should have changed everything. 1992. Universal Pictures backed Army of Darkness with a real budget. $11 million, massive by Evil Dead standards. This was Campbell's shot, his moment to prove he could lead a legitimate studio action film, and everything about it should have worked. The character of Ash Williams had evolved from terrified cabin victim to wisecracking, shotgun-wielding, chainsaw-handed badass. Campbell had the physique, having bulked up significantly from the earlier films. He had the chin, that legendary jawline that seemed carved from granite. He had the one-liners, delivering hail to the king baby, and Shop Smart Shop S-Smart with perfect timing that made audiences roar. The action sequences were legitimate. Campbell did his own stunts, fought skeleton armies, commanded medieval battles. He brought genuine martial prowess mixed with slapstick timing. He was doing physical comedy and action hero posturing simultaneously, something almost nobody could pull off. Director Sam Raimi gave him everything. Sweeping crane shots, heroic framing, the full cinematic treatment usually reserved for established stars. The film looked expensive, felt epic, and Campbell sold every single moment. This was his audition for action stardom on a major studio platform. The reviews came in mixed. Critics didn't know what to do with a film that was simultaneously horror, comedy, action, and medieval fantasy. It was too funny for horror fans, too violent for comedy audiences, too weird for mainstream action crowds. But the people who got it completely. Army of Darkness developed an instant cult following that endures 30 years later. Box office results? Disappointing by studio standards. The film made $21 million domestically, barely doubling its budget. In Hollywood math, that's a failure. Universal looked at those numbers and moved on to safer investments. Campbell's chance at studio-backed stardom evaporated. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Army of Darkness failed because Universal didn't know how to market it, not because Campbell couldn't carry it. They released it in February 1993, the dead zone of cinema. They cut the budget for promotion. They couldn't decide if it was horror or comedy, so they advertised it as neither effectively. Compare that to what happened with other action stars around the same time. Demolition Man came out later in 1993 with Stallone and Snipes. Same weird genre-blending concept, future action with comedy elements. Warner Brothers threw money at marketing, and it made $159 million worldwide. The difference wasn't the star or the concept, it was studio commitment. Campbell had delivered everything asked of him. He'd built Ash into an iconic character across 3 films. He'd proven he could handle action, comedy, drama, and physical stunts at the highest level. He had the look, the voice, the charisma, the work ethic, and the cult following that should have translated to mainstream success. Army of Darkness should have been his Terminator 2, his Die Hard, his moment of ascension. Instead, it became his ceiling, the highest he'd ever climb in theatrical releases. After this, the descent into obscurity began. And the most painful part? Campbell knew it. In interviews years later, he'd talk about Army of Darkness as the what-if moment, the role that proved he could do it, but also proved Hollywood didn't care. They had their action heroes already. They didn't need another one, especially not one who'd come from the horror cult scene, rather than bodybuilding competitions or football fields. The door slammed shut, and it stayed shut for decades. Why Hollywood passed him by? So, why didn't it happen? Why did Hollywood look at Bruce Campbell and decide he wasn't worth investing in? The answer reveals everything wrong with how the industry manufactures stars. First, the look. Campbell was handsome, 6'1", strong jawline, piercing eyes, but he wasn't the look Hollywood wanted in the early 90s. Schwarzenegger and Stallone were massive, bodybuilders with muscles that looked pharmaceutical. Van Damme and Seagal had martial arts credentials. Even Bruce Willis succeeded because he fit the everyman mold perfectly. Campbell fell into a weird middle ground, too theatrical for the muscle-bound tough guy roles, too physical and imposing for the everyman parts. He had leading man looks, but character actor energy. Hollywood hates categories it can't immediately understand, and Campbell confused them. Second, he was too funny. This sounds insane given that action stars are constantly trying to add comedy to their films. But there's funny, and then there's Bruce Campbell funny. His comedy came from physical slapstick and self-awareness that bordered on parody. When he delivered one-liners, there was always a wink behind it, an acknowledgement of the absurdity. Studios wanted action heroes who took themselves seriously. Stallone crying over Adrian, Schwarzenegger's stoic Terminator stare. Even when they joked, there was gravitas underneath. Campbell couldn't do gravitas without undercutting it with that smirk, that raised eyebrow, that chin jutting out in mock heroism. The industry couldn't figure out if he was making fun of action heroes or trying to be one. The answer was both, which made executives nervous. They wanted clear branding. Campbell was too self-aware for the muscle-bound roles, too action-capable for pure comedy. He fell through every crack in Hollywood's narrow imagination. Third, and this is the ugly truth, Campbell didn't come from the right background. Schwarzenegger had bodybuilding fame before acting. Stallone wrote Rocky Balboa and forced his way in. Van Damme had tournament karate credentials. Seagal had martial arts mystique and action coordinator experience. Even guys like Dolph Lundgren had the MIT chemical engineering degree story. Campbell, he was a theater kid from Michigan who made underground horror films with his high school buddy. No athletic championships, no muscles from gyms, no action coordinator resume. He learned everything on the job in those Evil Dead productions. But Hollywood didn't respect that path. It wasn't sexy enough, wasn't marketable enough. Fourth, studio politics and agent power. By the early 90s, action stars came from specific talent agencies with specific connections. They got packaged with specific directors and producers and deals worth hundreds of millions. Campbell wasn't in that system. He was loyal to Sam Raimi and their crew, which meant he didn't play the Hollywood game of schmoozing executives and building political capital. When Army of Darkness underperformed, Campbell didn't have a powerful agency fighting for his next big role. He didn't have producers who owed favors or executives who'd invested in his image. He was on his own, and in Hollywood, being talented and alone means being invisible. Fifth, timing. Campbell's peak moment came right as the action genre was shifting. The early 90s saw the rise of more grounded action films. Speed, The Fugitive, later Mission Impossible. These needed actors who could blend into reality rather than larger-than-life personas. Campbell's theatrical energy, perfect for the 80s action excess, felt outdated by mid-90s standards. If Army of Darkness had come out in 1987 instead of 1993, he might have caught the tail end of that sword and sorcery action wave that gave us Conan and Red Sonja. If it had come out in the 2000s during the ironic action revival, it would have been perfectly positioned. But 1993 was the worst possible timing. Finally, there's the uncomfortable possibility that Campbell himself didn't want to play the game required for superstardom. In interviews, he's talked about seeing what fame did to people, watching actors lose themselves in the machinery of celebrity. He'd stayed loyal to indie filmmaking and Sam Raimi rather than chasing every big-budget opportunity. Maybe Campbell being robbed isn't the full story. Maybe he also chose dignity over desperation, but that doesn't make watching his potential waste away any less painful. The straight-to-video wilderness. The late 90s through the 2000s were brutal. Campbell watched actors with a fraction of his talent headline films, while he scraped together work wherever it appeared. The descent into straight-to-video territory is where careers go to die quietly, and Campbell spent 15 years there. Congo, in 1995, gave him a supporting role in a major studio disaster. The film bombed, and Campbell's small part disappeared into the wreckage. Escape from LA in 1996 reunited him with director John Carpenter, but again, just a supporting role. He was becoming the guy directors cast for credibility with cult audiences, not the guy they built films around. Then came the television wilderness. Hercules. The legendary journeys, Xena, Warrior Princess, multiple episodes as different characters. Good work, steady pay, but these were fantasy shows aimed at niche audiences. Campbell was talented enough to elevate the material, but not visible enough to escape it. The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. in 1993 had shown promise. A steampunk western series with Campbell as the lead, mixing action with his natural comedy timing. Critics loved it. Fox canceled it after one season. That failure proved studios saw Campbell as too risky for leading roles even in television. By the early 2000s, Campbell had become a convention fixture. Comic-Cons, horror festivals, fan gatherings. He'd sign autographs, pose for photos, and tell war stories from the Evil Dead shoots. It was steady income, but it was also a public acknowledgement that his mainstream moment had passed. He directed Man with the Screaming Brain in 2005, a science fiction comedy he also starred in. Shot in Bulgaria for almost no money, it went straight to video. Campbell was making the films he wanted to make, maintaining creative control. But these were projects the general public would never see. The straight-to-video action films multiplied. Terminal Invasion, Running Time, the majestic and supporting roles. He'd show up, deliver professional work, collect his paycheck, and move on. These weren't passion projects, they were survival. What made this period tragic wasn't that Campbell stopped working. He stayed busy constantly. The tragedy was watching someone with leading man talent and proven box office cult appeal trapped in a system that had decided his ceiling 15 years earlier. Every direct-to-video release was a reminder of what could have been. Campbell maintained his dignity throughout. He never complained publicly, never badmouthed the industry, never played the bitter has-been card. In interviews, he'd joke about the low budgets and terrible scripts with the same self-aware humor he brought to his roles. But you could see it in his eyes during those convention appearances. The what-if question haunted him. Friends from the industry said Campbell never lost his work ethic. He'd show up prepared, hit his marks, and treat every production professionally, whether it was a $100 million blockbuster or a $100,000 thriller shot in Eastern Europe. That professionalism should have been rewarded with bigger opportunities. Instead, it just kept him employed in obscurity while lesser talents climbed higher. Burn notice and late recognition. Then 2007 happened. USA Network was building a new spy series called Burn Notice, and they needed someone to play Sam Axe, a washed-up former Navy SEAL turned beach bum informant, someone with action credibility but also comedic timing, someone who could sell toughness and vulnerability simultaneously. They offered it to Bruce Campbell. At 49 years old, after 2 decades of wilderness, Campbell got the role that would finally show mainstream America what cult fans had known all along. He was a legitimate star. Sam Axe wasn't the lead. That belonged to Jeffrey Donovan. But Campbell stole every scene he appeared in. The Hawaiian shirts, the beer, the one-liners mixed with genuine tactical knowledge. He made Sam Axe feel like a real person, someone who had seen too much and coped with humor because the alternative was darkness. Burn Notice ran for 7 seasons, ending in 2013. 111 episodes where Campbell proved he could anchor a hit show, deliver dramatic moments and comedy beats, and build a character audiences genuinely loved. The show averaged over 4 million viewers per episode. Sam Axe became iconic in a way Army of Darkness Ash had been for cult audiences. During the Burn Notice run, USA Network gave Campbell a television movie prequel focused entirely on Sam Axe. The fall of Sam Axe in 2011 let him carry a full production as the sole lead. He delivered completely, showing again that with the right material and support, he could be the center of everything. Critics finally started acknowledging what should have been obvious in 1992. Campbell had movie star charisma, leading man presence, and the ability to blend action and comedy at the highest level. Major publications ran pieces about his underrated career, his cult status, his Burn Notice validation. But here's the painful truth. This recognition came when Campbell was in his 50s. His action hero moment had passed. Nobody was offering him theatrical action films anymore. The vindication felt good, but it also felt too late. Campbell himself seemed at peace with it. In interviews during the Burn Notice years, he'd talk about enjoying steady work, appreciating the character, and connecting with audiences who had never heard of Evil Dead. He'd built a second act that most actors never get. Sam Axe brought him Emmy consideration, mainstream visibility, and financial security, but it wasn't what it should have been. Sam Axe proved Campbell could lead a successful long-running series. It proved audiences loved him when given the chance. It proved every studio executive who'd passed on him in the 90s had made a catastrophic mistake. The validation was real, but it came 20 years too late to give Campbell the film career he deserved. The legacy question. Today, at 66 years old, Bruce Campbell occupies a strange space in entertainment history. Ask horror fans who he is, and they'll launch into passionate speeches about the Evil Dead trilogy, about Ash Williams as an icon, about Campbell as the king of cult cinema. Ask casual moviegoers, and you'll get blank stares or vague recognition from Burn Notice. He never became the household name. His face doesn't appear on Mount Rushmore of action stars next to Stallone and Schwarzenegger. Kids don't play Bruce Campbell when they pretend to be action heroes. He didn't get the franchise films, the $100 million paydays, the magazine covers, or the cultural immortality. But here's what he did get: unwavering loyalty from the people who discovered him. The Evil Dead franchise spawned Ash for Evil Dead, a television series that ran from 2015 to 2018, bringing Campbell back to the role that defined him for 3 more seasons of chainsaw-handed glory. He was in his late 50s, playing a character that required intense physical stunts, and he delivered everything fans wanted. He wrote books. If Chins Could Kill in 2001 became a bestseller, giving fans insight into his journey with humor and honesty. His follow-up, Hail to the Chin, came out in 2017, continuing the story. These weren't celebrity vanity projects. They were genuinely well-written, funny, and revealing. Campbell became a voice actor, lending his talents to video games and animated series. The Spider-Man games cast him as a narrator, and he brought the same energy to voice work that he brought to physical performance. He stayed busy, stayed relevant, stayed working. The cult icon status means something real. Filmmakers who grew up watching Evil Dead cast him in their projects as homage. Edgar Wright, Quentin Tarantino, Sam Raimi, obviously, they all reference Campbell and the influence his work had on their understanding of cinema. That's a legacy most actors would kill for. But it's impossible not to think about the alternative timeline, the one where Universal commits to Army of Darkness with real marketing money, where the film succeeds commercially and Campbell gets offered the next big action franchise, where he becomes the face of 90s action cinema, leading trilogies and building the same mainstream recognition his cult status deserved. In that timeline, there's a Bruce Campbell action figure in every toy store. There's a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame with his name on it. There are franchise films that gross hundreds of millions worldwide with Campbell front and center. There's an entirely different career trajectory that leads to Academy Award consideration when he transitions to dramatic roles in his 50s. That timeline was possible. Everything required for it existed. The talent, the charisma, the work ethic, the cult following that proved audience appetite. The only thing missing was Hollywood's willingness to bet on someone who didn't fit their narrow mold of what an action star should be. Modern streaming might have changed everything for Campbell. If Army of Darkness came out today, it would find its audience instantly through social media and platform algorithms. The weird genre blending that confused 90s marketing departments would be celebrated as innovative content in the streaming era. Campbell's self-aware action hero persona would fit perfectly in the ironic postmodern entertainment landscape. He was ahead of his time, and Hollywood punished him for it. They wanted simple categories, and Campbell was complex. They wanted earnest muscle, and Campbell brought wit. They wanted safe investments, and Campbell represented creative risk. So he built his own lane. Cult icon, convention king, straight-to-video warrior, television character actor, author, voice performer, and eventually streaming series lead in his 60s. It's a remarkable career by any standard, but it's not the career he should have had. And that injustice matters because it reveals how many talented people Hollywood discards for reasons having nothing to do with ability. Bruce Campbell was robbed, not by lack of talent or effort, but by an industry that couldn't see past its own narrow vision of stardom. The chin is still there. The smirk hasn't faded. At 66, Bruce Campbell remains working, creating, and connecting with fans who never forgot what he brought to screens for 4 decades. He didn't get the franchise films or the mega stardom, but he got something arguably more valuable: the love and respect of everyone who truly understands what makes a screen presence legendary. Hollywood robbed him of mainstream immortality, but they couldn't rob him of his legacy. Every filmmaker who grew up watching Evil Dead, every actor who studies his timing, every fan who quotes "Hail" to the King Baby, they're all proof that Campbell won in ways box office numbers can't measure. The question isn't whether Bruce Campbell deserved better. The answer to that is obvious. The question is how many other talented performers Hollywood has discarded because they didn't fit the mold, and how much great art we've lost because executives couldn't see past their own limited imagination. Bruce Campbell should have been an action legend. Instead, he became something maybe more important, proof that real talent survives even when the system tries to bury it. If this story opened your eyes to an injustice that's been hiding in plain sight for 30 years, hit that like button and subscribe, because we're exposing more forgotten legends who deserved better. Share this with someone who needs to understand what Hollywood does to real talent. Drop a comment telling us which robbed star we should investigate next. The truth is always more shocking than the headlines, and we're just getting started.